All right, well, after the Padres' most recent loss, it is time to dive into the panic meter. What is happening out there amongst the Friar Faithful? It is a Wednesday. This is section 1904. I'm Darren Smith. He's John Gennaro. Appreciate y'all being with us. It's gotten to the point where we can no longer ignore what it is that's happening with the San Diego Padres, who dropped their fourth consecutive game. They lost in Toronto. And you wake up today, egads, the Padres are 27-19 and in third place in the National League West. My goodness, the sky is falling. I can just sense the misery. I saw Will Holder on a walk earlier today. He looked very, very perplexed. So I feel like we have to call in a heavy hitter. That's exactly what we're going to do. For those that have enjoyed Letters to AJ, the Substack, we're going to talk to Dylan here in a couple of minutes. Dylan will talk to us a little bit about his analytical observations, what it is that he has seen from the Padres. He has written the most recent post about an at-bat from Luis Arraez against Toronto on Tuesday night. So we're going to talk to Dylan about why it is that the Padres have these numbers, have this good record, but don't have a lot of good-looking offensive numbers. So we'll get into that in analytical form here in a little bit. John, how concerned are you as you wake up on Wednesday morning? The Padres are in third place, 27-19 in the NL West. Sleepy Bob Melvin's got the Giants ahead of the Padres right now.
I tend to not look at the standings. I like to say that I don't look at the standings before July. It's really June, so we're coming up on it. But I'm not that concerned. But there's definitely something, I don't know, wrong. Acee had a great newsletter this morning. I don't know if you looked at it, where he looked at like every team in MLB history that has ever won a championship to see if they've had a 4-game stretch this bad. And almost all of them have. I mean, almost all of them have had a 4-game losing streak. Some of them have had 4-game losing streaks where they scored like 3 total runs, although that category is a lot less. And a lot of those teams are like either magical teams, like the 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks, or teams that are built with like crazy defense and pitching, and that's how they want to win. It doesn't make sense for this to be happening for the Padres. I hope they come out of it. But I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I am too. As a matter of fact, I had to remind myself today while I was scrolling through the Padres schedule for 2025 that this is their second 4-game losing streak. They had one middle of April, right about this time last year. And then when they snapped out of that 4-game losing streak, they rattled off 6 or 7
last
wins.
Month. You said last year.
Month. Yeah, last month. Yeah. Second 4-game losing streak of 2025. So that would have been last month, not last year. So then after they got through it, they rattled off 6 or 7 in a row. So will history repeat itself here a month later? I guess we'll find out. But we'll talk a little bit about that with Dylan. No, I did not read Kevin Acee's newsletter today, although I will say I did wonder while watching the end of the Padre game last night, I did wonder if Kevin, who puts out this newsletter, did he include tidbits in today's newsletter? Because when Kevin gets frustrated with the Padres, he doesn't include his tidbits. And he'll even include a line like, nobody wants tidbits. This team isn't playing well, so you're not getting your tidbits, readers. And I always laugh at that because I picture Kevin like, none of you are in the mood for tidbits, Darren, so you're not getting my tidbits today. It makes me laugh that Kevin actually goes through the thought process of whether or not the team's performance dictates whether he does or doesn't include tidbits in his Padres Daily newsletter.
Darren, I love that you picked up on this, and I love this even more because now I get to read the tidbits section to you. Are you ready for Kevin Acee's tidbits section from the Padres Daily newsletter? I'm going to do it a little bit more forcefully than Kevin would, but that's okay. All right, this is where it starts. No tidbits today. Are you kidding? Okay, I will give you one. Four of the past 8 quality starts by Padre pitchers have come in games that the team has lost. That's it for me. Talk to you tomorrow.
Wow. Okay, so we've gotten to the point of the season now where Kevin is saying the impact of this team's performance has affected him and affected his work. I do love Kevin gets to this point 6 or 7 times a year where he's like, no tidbits. Wah, no tidbits. And that's where we're at. We've reached that point. I'm sure it's happened a time or two. Maybe it happened after the last 4-game losing streak. I don't remember. But I swear this is the way my brain works. I'm watching this game. I'm like, Ace Man might not give us tidbits tomorrow. I hope the Padres realize this isn't just a 4-game losing streak now. This is impacting the people who cover this team. We're not going to get our tidbits. Thanks, Luis Ariz.
All right. Speaking of the Padres' bad performance affecting Kevin Acee, I am going to give a tiny peek behind the curtain. I have a question for you. You admitted to me last night and then again this morning that you have not showered in several days, that you've worked out twice in this span and still not showered. So I know your wife's out of town, but I'm sure it smells terrible in your house. You're going to have to air that place out. My question for you is, do you think that the Padres' losing streak is somehow tied to your showering schedule? And do you think if you take a shower, I mean, we're going to go have lunch. I'm assuming you're going to take a shower. Do you think that the streak gets broken tonight after you shower for the first time in several days?
Yes. And thank you for airing me out here on the podcast.
Literally.
I am disgusted with myself because my wife went on a trip. She left. What day is today? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Yeah.
She left Monday morning, right? Tuesday morning? Tuesday morning.
Left yesterday morning.
Yeah.
I got up and I drove her to the airport on Tuesday. And then by the time I got home, then you and I recorded.
Yep.
And then I had to go out to SDFC training. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go out to training because it's hot out at Sequan. It's like 85 degrees. So I'm going to be sweaty. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to work out. Mm-hmm. So then I'm going to shower after the workout. And then something happened after the workout. Oh, then I had to do the SDFC midweek show with Adrian. And then it was like 8:30. And I was like, well, I'm going to get up and work out tomorrow. So should I shower? And if she was here, I absolutely would have showered, but she wasn't here.
She's going to know. She's going to come back and she's going to be like, why does the bed smell like this?
I know. And that was the big thing. She doesn't, I don't get into bed with her if I'm not showered. So anyhow, thank you. So then I got up today and I got another workout in and you know, we had to get the podcast going because we want to go meet for lunch. So it's a little bit earlier than normal. I will shower by the time you and I go have lunch. I think we're going to go have lunch in North Park. I think so. So we'll go watch the Europa League final between Manchester United and Tottenham. That should be exciting. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But yes, I will shower. And I do also have to change this battery. Thank you all for the advice. I told my wife I would have the battery changed by the time or that situation squared away. I did get the charger. It was delivered yesterday, so I'm going to charge it, drive it to O'Reilly Auto Parts a little later. Yeah, the jumper. So I have one of those now since I still don't remember where I let my jumper cables. Thank you for everybody offering the advice that you have to clean out the connectors and all that sort of stuff.
I didn't know any of that.
I'm just taking it to O'Reilly Auto Parts, and they said that they'll manage the situation, so I'm going to trust them that they can get that done. But yes, I will shower. So let's talk to Dylan. Dylan wrote a couple of interesting pieces here. This is... For those that don't follow Letters to AJ on social media, you should. For those that haven't subscribed to the Substack, you should. Letters to AJ. I love the way he describes what his Substack is all about. Offering a mix of Padre analysis, interviews, and allegorical fiction to the faithful fans of San Diego. I do love that. He takes a great analytical look. I don't know that all these conclusions are 100%, but, you know, this is the world in which we live, and he does as good a job as anybody. So let's get to the conversation. What is going on? Has panic truly set in with the Padres? Letters to AJ, our friend Dylan on Section 1904. All right, well, certainly one of our favorite conversations, one of our favorite Substacks. Dylan, Letters to AJ, joining us on Section 1904. Dylan, thanks for getting up. Thanks for being available to us. We always look forward to your insight in the conversation. How's things?
Things are good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. You used a word on your Substack the other day that panic had set in amongst the Friar faithful, amongst people who follow the Padres like yourself, who cover the Padres. Where is the panic meter right now in Padre land, according to you?
Well, I think it can only have gone up since that publication because it was a pretty dismal showing yesterday. It was a true shutout. And I think it was the fourth straight game where there was just abject futility hitting with runners in scoring position. I believe all three at-bats yesterday ended in strikeouts. And for the fourth straight game, the pitching was averaging, giving up 2 home runs to the opposing team, which just really highlights this area of concern of the lack of slugging on the lineup this year.
Well, let me just toss this out there real quick, just to not that anybody's waking up on Wednesday and feeling good about the Padres, but just a quick scroll through the schedule. I wanted to find out 4-game losing streaks, had they happened yet this season, and they have. I don't know how many people remember this. They lost the finale at Detroit 6-0. They came home, they got swept by the Tampa Bay Rays, 1-0, 4-1, 4-2. I don't know that you've gone back and looked at that. I'm trying to think if there's anything similar. It looks sort of similar just in terms of the offensive futility there. But one 4-game losing streak earlier this season was followed by a 7-game winning streak. Anything that you want to take away from that experience previously that you think might apply today?
I think what's similar is that as bad as the offense has been, it's been so bad that this is unsustainable. They've averaged 0.75 runs a game for the last 4 games. And I think the worst offense in Major League history still averaged, I think it was 2.4 or 2.5 runs a game, which is, more than 3 times the offensive output the last 4 days. So this is not representative. Still, the difference now is that you pretty much have a healthy starting lineup that's responsible for this very dismal offensive output. I think that's where a lot of the concern comes from, is you're not waiting for some slugger to come off the IL. You're not waiting for the lineup to look better. This is the lineup. This is the lineup that's supposed to produce, and it just hasn't.
I want to add to this because this blew my non-existent hair back a little bit. I wanted to find team splits, because I'm glad Darren laughed at that. I wanted to find team splits because I wanted to compare April to what we've seen in May so far. And Baseball Reference does April and March together because there's usually like 2 days in March and they don't want to do the whole month. So I'm going to do this statistic by statistic real quick. I'm just going to say April. In April, the team batting average was 259. So far in May, it's 260. It's essentially the same. OBP was 327 in April. It is 322 in May. Basically the same. In April, the slugging was 391. In May, the slugging is 394. Basically the same. And the OPS was 718 in April and 716 in May. I'm not going to sit here and be like, maybe the offense is just bad. Although I guess I do want to get into like roster construction, lineup construction, and the Luis Ariz of it all. But I do think that there's a world in which we look back at April like, man, what an incredible offensive team this was, but it's really fallen apart in the last couple of weeks. It's like, no, this is just kind of who they've been. And, I usually do the thing when the Padres score like 15 plus runs in a game where I'm like, well, the offense is about to fall apart. And I forgot until I read Acee's newsletter this morning that like the last time the offense looked good, they were scoring 21 runs against the Rockies. I'm like, oh yeah, that's usually a sign that it's going to fall apart any minute.
Well, that's that trope of, you got to ration your runs across the season. You can't score them all in one game. What are you doing?
Save them.
Yeah, save
right?
them. Save the runs. Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah. Well, what really stands out is just specifically the lack of home runs. Early in the season, you did see quite a decent home run pace initially. Jackson Merrill hit all of his home runs early on. You had home runs. Fernando Tatis has been the one performer all season that's continued to slug. And he's hitting leadoff, and he's quite frequently hitting solo home runs. So you're seeing the slug not turn into efficient run scoring, and you're seeing some of it disappear more recently. And specifically over the last 4 games, you have seen some bad at-bats from hitters that you're not used to seeing bad at-bats from, and we'll include Jackson Merrill in that. The piece this morning was about a specific habit of Luis Ariz that is definitely on the margins, but certainly contributing to difficulty stringing together run scoring opportunities. It's not going well right now, and I think where the panic comes from is it's not going well in that specific way that people were nervous about and kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop all season. So it's feeding into perhaps some prior notions of one of the possible failure modes of this offense.
And I think to John's point, when you look at it, 5th in batting average, I'm just giving you National League numbers here, 7th OBP, 8th in slug, 13th home run, 11th run scored. So, this is pretty consistent here. I know it's easy to look at what's going on here over the last 4 games, but John's point is a valid one, and Dylan has written about this as well. You talk about a lack of power production in my mind, and I think some of what you wrote the other day. gravitates towards Manny Machado. John and I talked about it the other day here on Section 1904. I want to say it was Monday. He has 3 home runs, and you took a deeper look at Manny Machado right now and where he's at and exit velocity and launch angle, things like that. Dylan, what did you learn about Manny Machado and the lack of slug that we've seen so far from the Padres third baseman?
Part of what's interesting about Machado is he specifically has good indicators in the slugging department, just not good outcomes. So he actually has put up one of his best expected WOBA, weighted on base average, years of his entire career. He's put up the highest hard hit percentage of his career. He's increased his launch angle, his average launch angle since last year. He's still hitting balls routinely in the extremely high exit velocity range. And he has 3 home runs. So what we look back at is he's always kind of a slow starter. He doesn't really get a lot of home runs early in the season. It gets better as the season goes on. But this year in particular, with 3 home runs, he's actually been robbed of at least 3 home runs, which is surprising and unusual and not typical for him. But these indicators suggest there's probably more home runs coming.
So you're not worried. I think the word I read that stood out to me was, maybe he's cooked. And I was like, what is that? What does that mean exactly? But you think maybe this is a product of luck?
There's probably a mix of both, just like with anything in life. It's multifactorial. There's some luck. There's probably some process too, but it's early season, and you don't usually see underlying indicators like this go on for the entirety of 162 games and never translate into hits with enough launch angle to be home runs. And even though it doesn't sound like much, if those 3 balls that he hit, each of which had, I think it was 74%, an 81%, and a 91% chance of going for home runs, had left the yard, it doesn't sound like much, but this is definitely a different conversation with just those three incidents. So I don't like to say things are specifically bad luck. That's very hard to prove. Mm-hmm. But in this case, you can't really rule it out, and you definitely need a larger sample before you draw conclusions like he's cooked as a hitter.
Early in the season, I remember there being a bunch of stats about how the Padres were scoring runs in the first inning more than any other team in baseball. There was also stats about they had more 5-run innings than anyone in baseball. So obviously they would, put a bunch of hits together and score a bunch of runs. But the first inning thing, I think, is really important, because if you're going to have Fernando Tatis Jr. lead off, and that your 8-9 hitters are going to be terrible, there's almost no better opportunity to score runs than in the first inning, right? Tatis is either going to hit a home run, or he's probably going to get on base and it'll cause chaos in front of Arise and Machado, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas other situations where Tatis is more likely to come up with 1 or 2 outs, when even if he gets on base, there's less of a chance that he comes around. You can't really fix that. It's not like they can take Luis Arise and be like, hey, you're the 9th hitter now. But having Tatis bat first, I understand you want to give your best player the most at bats. I've always been a proponent of this. But if Arise is never going to hit for power, and Machado's power is not currently there, you're just kind of putting Tatis in a spot where there's less chance of him coming around to score. And he's still in that spot where the guys in front of him are not likely to get on base. So I wonder if there's a world in which they flip-flop Arise and Tatis and try and, first of all, get Tatis better pitches to hit, but second of all, try and get people on base so that Tatis's solo home runs turn into 2 or 3-run home runs. Thoughts, Dylan?
Yeah, one of the things to think about is whether there's more efficiency to be gained through lineup construction. So before talking about any of this, Merrill and Machado, I think, are 3 for 28 combined over the last 4 games. So you're just not scoring runs when your number 3, number 4 hitter are completely devoid of any production. But when it comes to the theory of the lineup, yes, you're deciding that your best power hitter in terms of outcomes is going to take an at-bat, at least one at-bat every game with nobody on base. And when you have no production, no on-base percentage coming from the 8th and 9th spots, it's pretty likely he's taking multiple other at-bats that game with nobody on base. And that will definitely lead to less average run scoring when he does get to his home runs. So one way to handle that would be to move him down in the lineup a little bit. You could consider flip-flopping Arraez and Tatis, but we didn't write about this yet. But Arraez has not been right. He's not been himself. We were speculating about this a week or two ago when you saw Arraez wincing when he was swinging. That happened in the Giants series. It happened again when they were playing the Angels. If you look a little bit deeper, so Arraez has never been a player that's dependent on big exit velocities to be productive. But he has always been, one of the magic ingredients for him is that he doesn't hit with random launch angles. He's extremely good at, even though these are not high exit velocity hits, getting batted balls into the launch angle sweet spot, 8 degrees to 32 degrees, which is where you have your most productive hits. And that has fallen off a cliff, relatively speaking, for him. He was in the 99th or 100th percentile for most of his career, and he's dropped down into the, I think, 83rd percentile or something like that this year, with a concomitant drop in his exit velocity. And if there's a physical reason for that, if that's related to his hand still not being right from off-season surgery, you really got to think about dropping him not out of, the number two spot into the leadoff spot, but perhaps out of that top of the lineup, because he's just not going to be the same hitter that he normally is when he's missing, one of the magic ingredients to how he gets to such high and sustained batting averages. Right now, he is not moving runners over. He's not getting a lot of base hits, and he's constantly hitting behind the best power hitter. So that's not an efficient part of the lineup. You compound that with no production from Merrill and Machado, and you're just not going to score runs. So Merrill and Machado are probably going to regress to the mean. They probably didn't become bad hitters overnight. Tatis has actually sustained great production through the whole season. Arraez has not, and unless there's some reason, why he's getting healthy, if he's a different hitter, it is time to consider moving him down in the lineup, considerably down, perhaps out of the top 4 hitters in the lineup.
Wow. I mean, or up, right? Right. So it's sort of like, one or the other. Just out of curiosity, because I know that you would look at this analytically, and this isn't something where you would be knee jerk based on a couple of games. But Dylan, I just wonder, for you, if you're putting together, the top 5 hitters in this lineup right now, what's the lineup card that you would submit?
I would really like to see Tatis, Merrill, and Machado 1, 2, 3, and just create an incredibly high stress stretch in the order that opposing pitchers are going to have to be thinking about as the lineup is getting closer and closer to turning over. And something that we saw recently, especially, is opposing teams hunting those dead spots in the order to try to kill rallies. And you see this manifest with, you call it pitch arounds. You get hitters who just get, 4 or 5 pitches in a row that are all just off the edge of the plate, and the pitcher's hoping that the hitter's going to expand the zone, get himself out, and if the walk is issued, okay. Because there's an extremely good chance that with the dead spots coming up, this rally is going to end before any runs are scored. And one thing that I think would be interesting, and this gets at what we wrote this morning, is so Arraez has this habit of expanding the zone. And the kind of the intuitive thinking is that's a real problem because these are not good pitches to hit, and that's why he's not hitting well. And what's interesting is that the numbers actually show that he's hitting quite well when he expands the zone, but he's not taking walks. And whenever you swing the bat, you're always, even the best hitters in the league, more likely to make an out than to get a hit. And specifically in the game yesterday, there was a moment where you could really argue he should have just taken a pitch that was a 50-50 pitch, even though 50% of the time he's going to strike out because 50% of the time he's going to walk. But he just doesn't have that in his game. But when he's swinging at these pitches out of the zone, he still produces decently well. And I think it'd be really interesting to see what would happen if he was hitting in front of these dead spots. And so when they're trying to pitch around Arraez, he's still getting pitches that he can handle decently well. He can get to decent batting averages and even decent WOBAs. And see if you take away the ability for opposing pitchers to truly pitch around a hitter, you put a hitter in there that's not more likely to get himself out just because he's seeing bad pitches. And does that make it harder to just get to those dead spots? And if you have Tatis, Merrill, Machado coming up back to back to back, does that high stress have knock-on effects to the bottom of the order and just create better pitches to hit for everybody that needs it? Take away the ability to just straight pitch around a pretty decent hitter like Cronenworth, who's been a victim of hitting in front of these dead spots, and just create lanes in your lineup where there's very high stress on the opposing pitcher. And you see this model in a lot of other teams where when you've got 3 threatening hitters and you just put them back to back to back in the order, that's going to create runs almost every time through the order. Now, none of this matters if Merrill and Machado are going 3 for 28. There's just nothing you can do about that. But that would seem likely to regress to the mean in a good way going forward. The roster construction as it is just seems fundamentally flawed.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that because that gets me into my next point. Luis Arraez was a really good hitter for the Minnesota Twins, and people were shocked when he got traded to the Marlins. And then he was a really good hitter for the Marlins, and people were pretty surprised when he got traded to the Padres. And, Padre fans were like, yeah, we'll take a 300 hitter. And I'm wondering if this is the season where we go like, oh, that's why people don't want him on their team. Because he's really a one-tool player. Right? Like, it's not like his defense is bad, but in terms of like a tool that can positively affect the game, he's a one-tool player. He's not going to walk. He's not going to hit for power. He's not going to play great defense. He doesn't have an incredible arm that's going to affect the game. He's just a contact hitter. That's all he is. And the problem with having a contact hitter who can't play second base or shortstop or outfield to any sort of reasonable level is now you're taking away a spot that's supposed to be a power spot. And I remember Darren and everyone else in San Diego, outside of the 1 year where Chase Headley ate his Wheaties, talking about this and saying you have back then it was 4, now it's 5 spots in your lineup where you can put a power hitter: left field, right field, third base, first base. And you try and find little gaps here and there. Preller's constantly been looking for the catcher who can hit. He found himself a center fielder who can hit, et cetera, et cetera. But we're getting no power from left field. Machado's a big question mark right now. We'll push that to the side. And you're giving up power at first base by putting Arraez there every day. And you can't put him at DH because you need that spot for Gavin Sheets, who's one of your 2 or 3 guys actually hitting for power this year. Is this a sign that they need to move on from Luis Arraez? Maybe not this year, but in the offseason, and be like, hey, in terms of roster construction, we need that power there because right now there's just not enough. If Machado's power is on the downslope and they can't find someone with power in left field, your power hitters are at center, right, DH, and that's it. That's a problem, right?
I think it really comes down to what can you expect from Arraez going forward? Because he has not been himself, not just in terms of outcomes, but the underlying metrics really suggest something is wrong. So just to go back to this for a moment, the reason Arraez flummoxed projection systems is because he actually is a unique hitter. He has his success in ways that is just not typical for hitters. So his success comes from this pretty magical combination of good enough exit velocities. They're not high, but they're good enough. They are paired with very high contact, but the special ingredient is that ability to put the ball on a line in that sweet spot of launch angles that gets you lots and lots and lots of hits, even without great exit velocities. But what you've seen this year is his exit velocities have dropped meaningfully. His average exit velocity, I think, is 83 miles an hour, which that is untenable, even though his usual 86 to 88 is not, going to blow your hair back, as you said before.
John's hair, yeah.
It's good enough. It's good enough. 88 miles an hour average exit velocity when it's on a nice plane is going to get you lots of hits. But that launch angle sweet spot percentage has also cratered. So the question that comes to my mind, watching all these games this season and seeing him just wince over and over, is something physically wrong? And if something's physically wrong, teams always know more about their players than anyone outside the organization can. Should he be hitting where he is? If there's nothing physically wrong, and this is truly just the player that he's going to be, then it is a no-brainer. Of course, you're going to have to move on. The second part of what you asked, though, is very, very, very important, which is there's only so many premium offensive positions where you're likely to get a power hitter. And you have no power coming from left field. And it was a lineup construction choice to get a hitter like Arraez that doesn't have that power at one of those premium positions. And I think that's tenable when you've got power coming from all the other premium positions. But you add a second premium power position where you are getting nothing, that is untenable.
Right. They had an all-star in left field last year.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're also gambling on like this Gavin Sheets thing actually working out, right? Like this is, I don't know if people understand this. Gavin Sheets has been in the league for 5 years, and this is clearly the best season he's had as a hitter by like a mile. Like he's never been more than a .1 B-WAR player, and I think he's on pace to be like a 2 or 3 B-WAR player just based off his hitting, no defense at all. So that has to pan out as well. Darren, I'm going to ask this of you. Because when Dylan was talking about the wincing and everything, I was like, I wonder if this is tied to the concussion. Maybe he's not seeing things well. Do you want to take a guess at what Luis Arraez's batting average is since he has returned from his concussion?
I don't want to take a guess, but I'm glad that you did the work on this because I was trying feverishly to look it up before we started recording this morning because I was curious about that myself, especially based on what Dylan wrote last night.
It's a very Luis Arraez like slash line 307, 338. 400 slugging like that those are just his numbers. That's what he always does. Like apparently even with a lesser exit velocity and dealing with whatever he might be dealing with, he's still like, and I was thinking of this when Dylan was saying it about the underlying metrics. I was like, I don't know, Mike Schilt talks a lot about the back of the baseball card, and my guess is he's going to look at that and be like, hey, he's still hitting 300, like why would I move him?
Yeah, well, and then some of the other stuff. I mean, then there's like all the other factors, that you have to. We talked a little bit when we were all together at Mason Aleworks in Barrio Logan. We talked a little bit about 2023, and one of the things that was going on in that clubhouse is, you did have guys on expiring contracts who were looking ahead to free agency. And as I'm listening to Dylan talk about moving Arraez down in the lineup, he's never given any indication that he's not a team guy. But all of a sudden, you're going to have an agent like, what? My guy's batting sixth here? Like, what's the story? Getting less at bats, like he wants to lead the league in hits. And now you're, do you have to factor that in and all that sort of stuff? I know this is what makes the manager's job tough, that he has to make tough decisions like that. And he has to have the backing of his front office. But these are the kind of things that you have to think about if you're Mike Schilt. Moving Luis Arraez down in the lineup, I don't know, Dylan, I don't want to put words in your mouth to sixth or whatever. That might bring in, just a little bit of friction there for a guy who's thinking that, he's going to walk into free agency and hoping for a significant deal from some team out there. I mean, it's certainly, I think it's justifiable based on what you said, but the flip side of that is, it is a little bit of a risk internally in terms of, what that might mean inside of a clubhouse, which, is sometimes often stuff that gets whispered about more so than we're actually genuinely aware and quantifiably talking about it.
That's definitely true, and that's where team culture comes in. Mm-hmm. So if you do elevate special considerations other than winning above what should be the North Star for everybody, winning, then you can definitely run into culture problems where you're not making the best decisions because you're worried about the non-game consequences of such decisions. And that absolutely can tank a season. In this case, I think what it would come down to is really if there's a physical problem, if there's a physiologic explanation for the drop-in exit velo, the fact that he cannot square the ball up, at least thus far this season, like he has in past seasons, even though his back of the baseball card stats look, as you said, kind of similar to previous seasons. Yeah. Your expectation going forward is that you just don't have a player that can justify taking arguably the most important spot in the lineup. Mm. And that's where your culture comes in. Because if you have a culture that, even with those considerations, doesn't permit making a change, then you definitely have a problem. I don't necessarily think we've seen any indication of that.
Nope.
And I will say, so yeah, I just wrote an article that's pretty critical of Ariza's approach at the plate. I didn't think his swings looked terrible. I thought he hit a couple of balls on the screws yesterday, which is something that we've been waiting to see. And you never know with certainty what's going on with these players. If he was injured and they think he is healthy and it is just a matter of time before he becomes the Luis Ariza of old, you don't really have a problem. You just have to wait for the good times to come. And that's what we can't know from the outside, but Schilt and the rest of the team certainly will have a better idea of that. And that's what it comes down to. If he's going to be the Luis Ariza of old, no, change nothing. Keep him in there and just wait for the good times. But if there's reason to think that something continues to be wrong physically, and he's getting these bats through entitlement, that is a problem.
And you're convinced you leave Tatis alone? Or because, when I was thinking this through before we started rolling, I was like, I'm trying to think of what Dylan was going to say. And I thought one of the things he would say was maybe Ariza and Tatis flip-flop. And if Tatis doesn't like that, you say, hey, you know what, Fernando? Guess what? Like, we've paid you a lot of money. So like, you don't have to worry about this sort of stuff. And I don't mean that like in a mad way. Like we're the boss, you're the employee, you do what we say. It's like, no. Like, you don't have to worry about it. Like, we've already
You don't have to worry about your market value.
Right. So, you can sort of, you can say it in a way that might make everybody, feel okay about it. But like, I also look at Tatis and I'm like, but he's playing so well. He's playing so well, and it seems like we've been told he really likes leading off, and I don't want to really mess with that one either. So, it really is a little bit of a catch-22 when it comes to him, because I think you can make a justifiable case that he should be batting someplace else, but he's also playing great.
I think you could, but I just instinctively feel that making a change for Tatis is not really addressing the root problem. I think the root problem is you've got dead spots in the bottom of the order, players with some great qualities, but no longer major league hitters, absorbing all the at-bats just before him. And if you want to get Tatis to be in a more productive position in the lineup, well, fix those positions that are creating so many barren opportunities for him. That's where my mind goes.
All right, we read constantly Yu Darvish is, it looks like it's getting closer and closer every minute of every day. Dylan, let's just switch over to the pitching, John, unless you're still, do you have an offense question?
I don't really. Actually, my question was kind of about the pitching, and I have a big thing on my notebook that just says Darvish question mark, so this is good for me.
Darvish is magically, he will be available here at some point. Where are you fitting him in?
Good,
well,
Dylan.
You can never have enough pitching. So if he's healthy, you're giving him one of the rotation spots right away. And you may even go to a 6-person rotation if you feel good about Vasquez or Kolek or one of the other arms in the system maintaining some productivity. Darvish is a complete wild card right now. His return hasn't made a whole lot of sense. What the organization is putting out is a very murky timeline, kind of a start in the minor leagues that seemed to go fine, and then no announcement about when he'll be with the club exactly. So it just raises questions that can't be answered, but you need as much pitching as you can possibly get to get through this 162-game gauntlet with enough wins to make it to the postseason. So you have to think, if he's healthy enough to pitch, he'll be in the rotation soon. And it's very likely that he is going to be significantly better than, well, Kyle Hart definitely, and possibly even Kolek. Kolek was really effective his first 2 starts, and then his last start, you just saw all of the issues that haunted him last year, missing with location, even though his pitch shapes look pretty good. Major league hitters are going to tee off on pitches that miss with location. And he did that pretty consistently his last start against Seattle, and they torched him for 3 home runs. So massive ground ball pitcher, still got torched for 3 home runs with pretty bad location misses. So I think if he's healthy, Darvish is potentially a source of a lot of value. I'm really wondering if he's truly healthy, though.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say I was bringing up the thing earlier about the Padres to start the season. We're doing a lot of scoring in the first and second innings and getting a lead. And this is a team that is kind of built to be a run prevention team, like in that, by time you get down to the Jason Haywards and the Martin Maldonados of the lineup, hopefully their defense can be as valuable as their offense, right? And the bullpen is a lot more valuable if you're playing run prevention and trying to protect a lead. And all that stuff becomes less valuable than offense if you're trying to catch up, which is why they're less effective at that. Darvish, and that's I think that was my way of saying, like, that's why the pitching has felt a little less consistent lately. And I also think Kolek going up against a team that's not the Pirates, not the Rockies, and without a lead to protect, was pitching a little different. Dylan Cease, I thought last night, was pitching differently than when he has a lead and gave up a couple of home runs as a result of it. Adding more pitching would help. If Darvish is right, he would help. I am now a Yu Darvish truther, a Yu Darvish conspiracy theorist. Kind of like Dylan, I don't like what the team is doing and saying with him. He pitched 6 days ago. Seemed like he pitched fine, and we haven't heard anything since except A, he'll probably start a game in Toronto, and then B, he's not going on the trip to Toronto. Maybe he'll pitch in Atlanta. So this has all of the tellings of a classic Padres. There's a terrifying injury, and they don't want to tell us yet, so they just keep pushing the ball down the field for as long as they can. I'm reaching the point where I'm going to be surprised if Yu Darvish is starting games for the San Diego Padres before July, if not at all. I would love to be surprised. I love Yu Darvish. I'm a big Yu Darvish fan. But I'm getting to the I will believe it when I see it portion of the Yu Darvish experiment.
I think that's where you have to be at this point. You want to be pleasantly surprised, but you probably don't want to count on the outcome that you're hoping for when there isn't a great explanation for this series of events. So let's hope that there's something exculpatory that comes out in the next several days. But right now, it doesn't necessarily seem guaranteed that the Padres are soon going to have another effective starter. Again, let's hope we're wrong about that.
It's sort of the Padre motto, right? You hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Yeah. That's been Padre baseball for as long as I've been covering.
I think some people phrase it as there's always a deeper darkness.
Yep, indeed. All right, John, we have taken up a lot of Dylan's time here.
We have.
And we thank him for that. And this was like a 30-minute conversation where we didn't mention Xander Bogaerts' name once.
I almost did.
I know. I almost did too. Let's do it then on the way out. Is he actually playing better, or are we just to the point now where we're like, it is what it is. It's not even worth the conversation because it's the same conversation as always.
I think he's playing well enough that this could be an effective lineup, even if he doesn't improve. It's hard to say that he's playing well. He has an OPS under 700. He is still playing a premium position, and he has not played that poorly. He's actually been, overall, a positive force for winning at that position. Certainly not the type of production that you're hoping to get based on the contract, but I wouldn't put him at the center of the Padres' woes, at least not at the moment.
Well,
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say I've been digging into his splits a lot just to try and keep tabs on him, and for the season he's like Dylan said, he's got an OPS under 700, 696, but for the last week it's 794. For the last 2 weeks it's 750. So he's trending in the right direction. I think the thing about Xander is like we kind of expected that he would figure something out and there would be like this huge jump, and all of a sudden he'd have a hot month where he's hitting for power and he's hitting over 300, and we're like, there it is. There's the guy that they signed to that big contract. That's exactly why they signed him. And then later we could have the conversation of like, well, he can't do that all season long, but hopefully you time it right in September, October. But I think it's been the opposite of that, which is I think he's just getting a little bit better each day, each game, each week. And I don't know if that's more sustainable, less sustainable, what it says. It's just interesting because it's usually not how baseball works. Like baseball players, especially hitting, is usually so like streaky. And it doesn't seem like Xander's streaky at all. It seemed like he was bad and he's working on it and he's getting better. But like he's not going to go bad, good, which is very unlike a baseball hitter.
One thing about Bogaerts also is it does feel like there's been a little bit more of an acknowledgement that you don't necessarily want him hitting second or fourth when you can help it. And that was something where that seemed pretty evident for a while, but there seemed to be some maybe denial of that, and he was just being plugged into these very important lineup positions. And he's been hitting a little bit lower in the lineup, which is appropriately aligned with the skill set that he's demonstrated now for the last couple of seasons. And in those lower spots in the lineup, he's not terrible there. He's fine. You can win with someone producing the way he is, as long as that isn't taking up, the absolute heart of your order. And that's a good thing. I will say, I think the struggles of the rest of the offense has taken some heat off of him, though, because unfortunately, for the duration of his tenure with the Padres, his production is going to be tied to that contract. And I would speculate the days of him living up to that contract are already over.
I would agree with that. Dylan, we've taken up a ton of your time. Your work is excellent. People can find it at Substack, letters to AJ, all sorts of great analysis, and it comes with great video and still photography there to back up the cases that he's often making. I love what you were writing about Kenley Jansen the other day. Wow, how about that? The Dodgers were still stealing signs. I know, it's a tradition in baseball. But it was really, really good and smart analysis, and you'll be smarter having just listened to that with Dylan and also reading all of his work there, available at Substack. We appreciate it. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Dylan. And for everybody who is listening, and we do appreciate those who are subscribing. This is what it's all about. This is the kind of content that we plan to deliver on a regular basis. So thank you all for subscribing, and thank you all for supporting this. Thank you all, whether it's the free show on Mondays and you're on a free trial, right? We do offer free trials for people who want to jump into this. So you do have 5 days, and if you're in that 5-day window because you joined us on Monday or Tuesday or whatever, we do appreciate that, but it'll cost you as little as $5 a month, and we have pretty consistently put out at least a show a day. John will give you each and every day the front row seat, which arrived this morning. I will tell you that I read that bright and early before I even got out of the rack. I was scrolling through some of the stories that John feels like will make your day a bit better. So do appreciate all the work that we're doing there. Bonus content, all sorts of stuff happening if you become a subscriber. Again, for as low as $5 a month, go to section1904.com.
Hey, wait. You sent me the article that I included in Front Row Seat about them having these helicopter things that are going to take people around LA for the Olympics. Would you get in one of those?
Absolutely not.
Me neither.
Absolutely
I just want to
not.
make sure.
I've never been in a helicopter in my life.
I don't want to.
We were going to do it. We went to Hawaii.
Are you afraid of heights?
When you go to what's that?
Are you afraid of heights?
I'm finding myself more afraid of heights. Not afraid. I don't know that that's the right word, but a little more apprehensive about heights as I get older. I don't know what it is. I used to love that sort of stuff. Used to go climb around on rooftops, all that sort of thing. But now I'm finding myself, I noticed this when I was in Spain, a time or two when I was in a taller building. I was like, that's a long ways down, isn't it? But we were going to go to Hawaii, and, you start looking up all the things you can do. You go kayaking and ziplining and all that sort of stuff. And one of them is a helicopter tour. And when I looked up some of the helicopter tours, I was shocked at how many of these helicopters don't actually land where they're supposed to. It's I don't know what the number is. And it's probably not a big number. It's just a bigger number than I was prepared for. And I was like,
you mean like hot air balloons? Like they don't really have control over where they're going to land? Or
sometimes I don't know what's going on there with the oversight, I guess. And some of them just kind of go down where they go down. And I'm not saying that they crash. I'm just saying sometimes as they're touring people around whichever island it is.
Like, oh, there's a field over there.
Yeah, it's sort of like, there's a little patch on the side of this mountain. We kind of got to figure something out here. And I said, I don't think that's for me. So I've not done it. And I don't know that I would take a helicopter around Los Angeles during the Olympics in 2028. But, I'm not sure that I would get in a driverless Uber either. Would you?
I haven't had the chance yet. There are times in which I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And then there are times where I see videos of those things being terrible, and I'm like, why would anyone do that? So I have yet to actually make a strong stance on that. But I wanted to say, A, thank you for reading Front Row Seat, because that does take effort every morning. And B, thank you for sending me links to include in Front Row Seat, which is a thing that I encourage everyone to do. If you see a link and you're like, I want people in San Diego, people in Section 1904 to know about this story, if it's sports related, if it's not, send it over to me, JG at Section 1904, and it will likely end up in a future edition of Front Row Seat.
I think I saw a couple of them here that I felt like
there was the one
I just randomly emailed John stories in the middle of the night when I was in Spain and such.
You do. There's the one from the Wall Street Journal about what's a swing, what's a check swing. That was interesting.
Yeah, they're gonna do some use some AI technology for check swings now. Apparently, so
yeah,
got all sorts of stuff happening. That's gonna ruin Mark Grant's bit about hitting it as a double.
My favorite thing was like a year ago when it actually happened. Like someone did a check swing and it was a double and it was like a nationally broadcast game, so Mud wasn't on the call. And I remember being furious. I was like, and then the next game that Mud was on the call, he mentioned it. He's like, "See, told you, it's a double every time."
Randy Vasquez and Kevin Gossman will be the pitching matchup tonight. Do we want to jump into the Acee stuff, or should we save that for tomorrow? Because Kevin Acee wrote a story the other day. Since we started the Section 1904 with Kevin Acee, maybe we end it with him. Padres have become something bigger, better since they got their Manny. This was written for yesterday's newspaper. I think it was available on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And I went back and I contrasted that with a story that was written at the end of the 2023 season. As the Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. And there's a rather lengthy segment here about Manny Machado, and the segment's paragraph title is The Manny. Talk about the Padre culture. Manny Machado has to be the first person mentioned for the immensity of talent and on-field contributions, the force of his personality, and the responsibility that comes with the $350 million contract. It's an interesting contrast from where we were at the end of 2023 to where we are here at the beginning of 2025. Do we want to go into depth on this, or should we save this for a different day? Because he seems to... give credit to Manny, which I think is where a lot of the credit should be. And this is backed up by quotes from Joe Musgrove and some other people who have been there from where we were in 2023 to where we are now. This is also interesting because there's some stuff from Manny Machado in there about how he played like shit in his first season in San Diego and how he's become a much better player. And there's also, I guess, predictably some credit given to Mike Shildt from Kevin Acee about the evolution of Manny Machado as a leader inside of the Padre clubhouse. What did you think?
Okay, so the interesting parts to me was where the credit was being given, right? And contrasting these two stories, because the one after the 2023 season was really based around like Manny doesn't do the extra shit, right? Like he doesn't do the on-field drills except for rarely, and he doesn't rah-rah the guys unless it's absolutely needed. And this one was all about how Manny does the little things now. And of course, that has to be because of Mike Shildt. We've talked about, Acee has kind of a personal relationship with Shildt, and he might be, trying to give Shildt a little bit more credit here. I appreciate that Manny is doing the little things now. I appreciate that he's doing the on-field drills and all that. I imagine a bigger reason why he's doing that is less about Mike Shildt, more about, A, he got called out for it in 2023, so now it's a thing that people look for, and B, he got a big ass contract since then, didn't he? It was after 2023 that he got the extension, right? Or was it during 2023?
I think it was right before 23, which I think was a contributing factor to some of the stuff that happened in that clubhouse. Because that's when everybody realized, hey, there's only so much money to go around here. And Manny showed up at spring training that year, and one of the first things that he said when he arrived in Peoria was, I'm opting out of my contract at the end of this year. And instead of everything coming off the 2022 run to the National League Championship Series, instead of everything being about how to build off 2022, the story of spring training in 2023 was Manny Machado opting out of his contract. And it got to the point then where Peter Seidler was put on the spot, and he said, Manny Machado is my number one priority. And then before the start of the season, he ended up signing that extension. And it probably set a bit of a tone inside of that clubhouse that Juan Soto realized his future wasn't here. Other players might have realized, hey, there's only so many dollars, even with Peter Seidler and the deep pockets. So, it was a bit of a tone setter for whatever it is that people want to say. I'm not rewriting history. I said this at the time. It was everything was about winning until everybody got to Peoria that year, and then everything became about Manny Machado opting out of his contract, which was sort of like why do we have to have this conversation now? Like why can't we have it over the span of the season? So I do think it was a factor, but yeah, that I agree with you. Go on. So I do think that was a big part. He got paid. He got called out. He's also now 31, 32 years old. I think it's understandable that somebody's going to mature. Somebody's going to be an adult. I'm not saying that Mike Shildt doesn't play any factor in any of this.
Oh, you also forgot to mention the last time we were talking about this off air. Another thing that will help a brain to mature. Literally, there's been science done on this to prove your brain chemistry changes, especially for women, but also for men, when you become a parent. And Manny Machado had a child. He has a child now. And that's another thing or person that you have to be completely responsible for. And sometimes that makes you realize that you need to be you need to be better in the other parts of your life, more responsible in the other parts of your life. Maybe that has helped him be a more mature leader, or just take more care of his role as, one of the big parts of the team, one of the legs holding the team up. I did just want to very, very quickly, because I'm petty, I don't love when people rewrite history, especially when they rewrite parts of history that involve people who aren't here anymore. I took a little bit of issue with Kevin Acee giving Ron Fowler the credit basically for bringing in Manny Machado. I'm just going to read this part. I'll start, and I'm starting kind of in the middle, but you'll get it. It was at that time that the Padres were looking for a third baseman. They were running out of options when, towards the latter part of the offseason, President of Baseball Operations A.J. Preller suggested, almost as if on a whim, to Ron Fowler that they go after Manny Machado. Preller was passionate about Machado as a player. He believed in the power of what is essentially the Machado team, which is Manny's wife, his brother-in-law Yonder Alonso, as influences in Manny's life. Ron Fowler and Peter Seidler believed in Preller enough to stay in as the price rose, and eventually they got their man by guaranteeing him $300 million over 10 years, the richest contract ever awarded a free agent in any U.S. sport. Is that the way the story was told to you? Is that the way that you understand it? Because I understood it as this was the beginning of Peter and AJ and their partnership and being we know what this can be. And all of a sudden to have Ron Fowler, who's quoted in this article time and time again, and literally got a quote from Ron Fowler today, and he said this. It feels like a slight retelling where Ron Fowler is maybe being given or taking some credit that I don't think I've heard him get in the past.
Yeah, I do think that is a little bit of a rewrite there. Because I do remember, and I'm really trying to find this quote on the fly, but I do remember Ron Fowler on the record saying, we're never going to sign a $300 million player.
Right. Yes.
And I remember when Jeff Passan broke the story that Manny Machado was going to become a Padre, Jeff, who is always good to our radio show, Jeff made himself available. And I said, Jeff, I have this quote from Ron Fowler here who said, we're never going to sign a $300 million player. What changed? And I will always remember, I wish I still had the access to my audio, but I will always remember what it was that Jeff Passan said. He goes, well, let's just say Peter Seidler's a little bit more of a factor than he used to be. And he just planted that seed with me, and I always remembered it because I think your point and your observation spot on. That was the beginning of Peter Seidler's Padre era. When you had one owner who said, we're never going to do this, and you can go and look it up, somebody will. You can find this quote, I'm sure, somewhere. I don't remember if he said it on a radio show or if he said it to the UT. But he said, we're $300 million contracts don't make any sense for us. By the way, you got 3 of them now. But, neither here nor there. And when I asked Passan about that specifically, that's exactly what he said. He's like, let's just say Peter Seidler's more of an influence in ownership than he used to be. And it almost got to the point where I was like, I think Peter might have just said as lead investor, I want this to happen. And this is going to happen. And I do think that was a really, really big turning point for the Padres organization. He became a dad. He's 32. He got humiliated at the end of that season. Oh, by the way, I hate saying it this way, but his effort at the end of that season, you can go and you can read some of the quotes in that Kevin Acee piece from the end of 2023, where the topic of culture was brought up. And he goes, what is this, college baseball?
What is this, high school?
Yeah, what is this, high school? What is this, college baseball? He laughed at the idea that culture would matter in the big leagues.
Yeah.
To the point then where his manager quit, right? Say what you will.
Yeah.
And, 30 people, according to Kevin Acee, were interviewed for that story. Am I to believe that Mike Shildt wasn't one of them? I don't know. Just saying. I don't know about that.
Okay.
Because he was in the organization there. But also his owner was dying while he's sitting there and allowing ego to run the Padre clubhouse. Yeah. I would have to think all of those things probably factor in. And good for Manny that he's become this version of himself. Seriously. Good for Manny Machado. But I'm with you. I don't know.
No, because this is my question to you. Do you believe, and this is not necessarily a questioning of Kevin Acee, because Kevin Acee is both someone who has to report the stories, but someone who needs to make sure that he has the access to report the stories. And
he's around it more than us a million times over.
A million times over. So sometimes reporters will write what are usually called fluff pieces, so to get on someone's good side so that they can get quotes from them and news from them and tidbits from them when the team is not, pissing them off. And do you think that this is a fluff piece that Kevin is writing to try and get on Manny Machado's good side, especially after that 2023 article? And we've seen how Manny has kind of interacted with Acee since then. Or do you think that this is an honest telling from Kevin Acee of like, wow, I'm so impressed with the man that Manny Machado has become?
It might be a little bit of both. I heard a couple of different reactions from people in the Padres organization when Kevin wrote what he wrote in 2023. One person flat out told me Kevin was, dead on bullseye, and I give him a ton of credit because it takes balls to do what it was that Kevin Acee did. And Kevin got slaughtered by the Padre fan base, by and large. Slaughtered. Hit piece, all that sort of shit, right? And then you had every other reporter running down there to go kiss up and interview other players and be like, no, Manny's a great leader. Manny's a great leader, even though Kevin had 30 other people here off the record suggesting that the opposite was true. And, I know Kevin went to great lengths to say this entire story wasn't about Manny, but that was the only takeaway, okay? That was the only takeaway. So, again, this is the 2023 piece. I had one Padre employee who told me, I give that dude a ton of credit because A, we think he got it right, and B, he had the balls to walk back into that clubhouse, and that ain't easy. And Manny was not happy about it. Manny was not happy. There were other reporters who told me that they saw Kevin and Manny, disagreeing with one another, like having animated conversations when nobody else was around, all that sort of stuff. So, it was not a good look for Manny. And Manny was not happy about that story. But maybe it was a point where Manny got reflective. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, all these other things happen, right? Peter passes away, and he becomes a dad, and a new manager comes in who does have some interesting things to say. Not taking anything away from Shildt. I'm not saying that he's played no role in this development. Somebody had to be there. But, is Mike Shildt the key that unlocked all these things about Manny Machado? Or is he just a 31, 32-year-old man who's got a world of life experience here and maybe a little bit of regret that should have been better in 2023? That should have been a better situation. And now he's emerged from this sort of stuff. And Mike Shildt, whether it's causation or correlation, one of those great conversations that we always have in sports, I tend to think maybe it's a little bit of both. But I always thought the next manager was always going to get a better version of Manny Machado. That next manager could have been John Gennaro, and it would have been a better version of Manny Machado that following season than it was previously just because of the circumstances. Because how could you not have been reflective, wondering who it was in this organization that took the time to go talk to Kevin Acee in great detail about some of the things that you weren't doing as a leader? Yeah. And I think that was really important.
Yeah, I'm gonna tie together some strings here. So, one of the things that really guides maturity is mortality, right? Like understanding your own mortality. You jumping on the roofs of houses when you're 15 years old, you have no sense of like, I could die. That's why there's no fear there. But now you're an older man. You understand you can die. I didn't mean to make that you sound elderly, but you're older than 15 and you have more maturity because you also understand that there's stuff that can be lost here, including your life. There's a version of this in sports too. Understanding your sports mortality. Like the clock is ticking. I'm over 30. I can't do this. Like Manny knows that he's 31, 32? He knows he's going to be alive for 30, 40 more years. But as a baseball player, he's only going to be that for like 10 more years. He also has to understand I'm not the guy I was when I was in my 20s in terms of power, speed, defense, all that stuff. It's all on a downslope. It always is for everyone that is probably 32 or older. And I think he looks at Tatis and Merrill and he's like, it can be his team if he's the mature leader, But if it's the three of them just going like, hey, whoever's the best player gets to lead the clubhouse, like that's not a winning game for Manny. So I wonder if the success of Tatis and the success of Merrill has made Manny realize that he needs to bring something more to the table in terms of being a leader, being a good clubhouse guy, and he can't just be, the good hitter, good defender, good guy on the field. Culture can matter for him.
I think that's all very fair. I think that's probably accurate. And again, I have to defer to people who are around it a lot more. I don't travel with the team. I do not. And I also think it should be noted here that in this AC piece, Manny's on the record talking about, Mike Schultz being a factor. I just don't think he's like the factor, and I think that's a little bit of AC and his relationship with Schultz, and that's fine. I've had relationships with athletes too.
Sure.
I always tell the story, when Rivers used to throw 3 interceptions in the game, I'd be like, man, this offensive line sucks. Was there a bad interception in there? Probably. It probably was. But I do think that the story, I think that the story, is much more than, since this guy got here, then, that's when this whole thing turned around. I think everything that's happened in this guy's career has probably led him to the point where he's a sports owner. He's been impacted by playing here. And the whole purpose of the story is that he's about to become, having played more games as a Padre than he has as an Oriole, which, I think everybody does identify him as a Padre now. And I think Manny is a great success story for who he has become. So, we can just focus on hitting more than 3 home runs in a season with him and not really talk about all the other sort of stuff and some of the baggage that came with Manny Machado inside of the clubhouse that people wanted you to believe really wasn't a big deal up into the end of the 2023 season. But there were a lot of things that happened there that probably factored in to this maturation process. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't think it's just as simple as, I guess you got to give credit to a new manager here. I don't know. That's like reductive rationale, and it's just a little too tiny. But again, considering where it's coming from, I understand.
You take it with a little bit of salt. Hey, wait, before we get out of here, just very, very quick question, because you mentioned Phillip Rivers. Do you know what Phillip Rivers is up to these days?
Like a high school coach or something, right?
He's like a high school coach. I think he's coaching his son's team, Gunnar Rivers, who I swear to God, I met Gunnar when he was like 6 or 7 years old. He was running around Chargers Park. And Phillip was like, yeah, he's telling like the media, he's like, that's my kid, Gunnar. He's going to be a quarterback someday, blah, blah, blah. And now he is like, I think he's a senior in high school. He's getting offers from like Auburn and stuff to go be a quarterback there. But Phillip Rivers built in Alabama, I think, a field of dreams for football. He built a football field surrounded by corn, like on like all sides. So it's in the middle of a cornfield. And he's just like, there was a video where like John Gruden went to go visit him and meet his son. Cause Gruden, I talk to quarterbacks before they're in the draft. I talk to prospect quarterbacks about quarterbacking, whatever. And there's a video of Gruden showing up and Phillip's just sitting there like a proud papa, like, look at my field. Look at what I built. It's in the middle of a cornfield. It's like the Field of Dreams, but football edition. It's so Phillip Rivers, right? To just try and romanticize football to the point that people have romanticized baseball.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it's been a minute since I've interacted with Phillip. I think we texted about a year ago over something. I don't remember what it was, but maybe I saw him at some sort of Charger event or what have you. Anyhow, that was a good podcast today. That was a lot of Padres. Let me just take this quick opportunity on the way out. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, the SDFC Midweek Live Show will be on at 6 o'clock. San Diego Sports 760 iHeartRadio app. You can also find it on demand. Interviewed Luca Bombino yesterday. I think we might make that available here at Section 1904. What a kid, man. Yeah. 18 years old, and you would not know it talking to him. When you listen to this, you're reminded constantly that he's 18 years old. And he's a kid who's played 3 straight matches, 90 minutes each. And he's got some bruises to show for it. I sat with him. He was wearing a cutoff shirt. He had some bruises on his arms, on his shoulder. So he is just loving life. He's got a really interesting story. A family full of Italian immigrants. Talked a little bit about how he got involved in soccer. It's always funny to me when you're talking to like an 18-year-old. He's like, man, I waited my whole life for this. Like, yeah. Like, have you waited your whole life for this? But he's a great story, and he really wants it. That's the thing. Like, he really, really wants it. And We talked about the mindset of a defender. There's this great quote about, Carlo Ancelotti, who's the outgoing manager at Real Madrid, who's going to Brazil, always says, there's two types of defenders. There's optimists and pessimists, and I like pessimists because pessimists are always worried that something's going to happen, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
I want my defenders to be pessimists. And he's like, that's me. So he's great. He was really, really good. Kobe Jones is on the show tonight, and Warren Barton talks to Mikey Varas, and then the LA Galaxy come to town this week. We can talk about that Thursday and Friday. But John, let's go lunch.
Let's go to lunch real quick. Do you know who Tom Holland is?
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
He's an actor. He's Spider-Man, the last few Spider-Man movies.
I don't think that's who I was thinking of. I was thinking of a horse racing analyst, so maybe that's Tom Hammond.
I think that's Tom Hammond. Go look up Tom Holland. I feel like Luca Bambino can be a ringer for Tom Holland.
Okay. No Western Conference Finals. That game was sort of a beatdown, and hopefully Ant isn't going to be limited in the series, and then we get the Eastern Conference coming up later tonight. So my entire mood will depend on a baseball game in Toronto and a basketball game in New York. But,
as it should be.
Yep, and John's entire mood will be dependent on what happens in Bilbao, Spain, between Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United. So we'll go watch that in North Park. Thank you to everybody for listening and for subscribing, and we'll do it again tomorrow.